The discovery at Sutter's Mill, 1848. The year 1848 marked a turning point not just for California, but for the destiny of the United States as a whole. Nestled in the rolling hills of the Sierra Nevada mountains near the settlement of Coloma, a simple sawmill became the cradle of a revolution. The mill, under construction by carpenter James W. Marshall and financed by the ambitious Swiss settler John Sutter, was intended to serve as a key piece in Sutter's plan to build an agricultural empire in the fertile Sacramento Valley. But fate had other plans. One chilly January morning, as Marshall worked on the water channel that powered the mill, he noticed glints of something unusual among the gravel. Small, yellowish flakes that sparkled in the light. At first he thought it might be fool's gold, but repeated testing confirmed the truth. It was real gold, and in significant quantity. What followed was an attempt at secrecy born out of fear. Sutter was horrified. He knew that if word got out, his carefully laid plans for a peaceful agricultural colony would be crushed beneath the weight of greed and invasion. Yet news of such magnitude could not be contained. Laborers talked, letters were written, and by March, stories of a golden discovery in the California wilderness began to circulate. These stories initially found little traction, but the momentum shifted dramatically when President James K. Polk, in a message to Congress in December 1848, confirmed the authenticity of the reports. From that moment, the discovery became a national obsession. Newspapers, merchants, and adventurers fanned the flames, and dreams of unimaginable wealth took root in the hearts of thousands. People who had never considered leaving their hometowns now envisioned themselves as pioneers of fortune. But beyond the shimmer of gold lay deeper, more complex currents. The discovery at Sutter's Mill was more than a geological event. It was a social and psychological explosion. It reawakened the American dream at a moment when the nation was expanding westward, uncertain of what that future would look like. Suddenly, here was the promise of reinvention, of a life not determined by birth or class, but by courage, endurance, and a bit of luck. Yet even at this early stage, the shadow of darker consequences loomed. The land that bore this treasure was already inhabited by Native American tribes whose lives and cultures were soon to be decimated. And while some would find fortune, many more would lose everything: money, health, families, and even their lives. The gold rush had not yet begun, but the spark had been lit, and nothing would ever be the same again. The California Gold Rush begins, 1849. By the dawn of 1849, the spark ignited at Sutter's Mill had become a roaring wildfire, spreading across continents and oceans. Tens of thousands of people, gripped by tales of instant riches, set their sights on the remote and mysterious land of California. The surge of fortune seekers, who would become known as the 49ers, formed one of the largest and most diverse human migrations in history, from cities in the eastern United States, from the mountains of Peru, the ports of Chile, the slums of London, the rice fields of China, and the ports of Australia, they came. Some braved the long, brutal journey around the tip of South America. Others crossed the disease-ridden jungles of the Isthmus of Panama, and many endured the scorching deserts and freezing mountains of the overland trails. The risks were immense. Dysentery, starvation, robbery, and shipwreck claimed thousands before they even reached the goldfields. But the dream of striking it rich drove them on. California, once a sleepy, remote outpost of the former Mexican Empire, was suddenly at the center of the world's imagination. San Francisco, a modest village of just a few hundred residents, exploded in size and energy, becoming a teeming, chaotic boomtown. Makeshift shanties stood beside luxury hotels, wagons blocked muddy roads, saloons, gambling dens, and brothels lined the streets. Fortunes were made overnight, not only from gold, but from those who sold to the miners, hoteliers, shopkeepers, cooks, and clothiers. Entrepreneurs like Levi Strauss and Samuel Brannan became millionaires not from gold dust, but from denim pants and pickaxes. This second economy, based on supply and speculation, grew as fast as the mines themselves. In the hills and riverbeds of the Sierra Nevada, miners worked from dawn until dusk. At first, gold could be scooped from the riverbed with pans and shovels. But as the easy pickings vanished, men turned to more aggressive methods: rock crushing, deep pit digging, and later, the devastating practice of hydraulic mining. The physical labor was punishing. Lives were often reduced to mud, hunger, exhaustion, and the faint hope of a golden flake at the bottom of a pan. Few struck it rich. Many ended up in debt, trapped in a cycle of broken promises and physical ruin. Amid this chaotic gold-fueled boom, California became a turbulent crossroads of culture, conflict, and change. It was one of the most diverse places in America, yet also one of the most divided. Racism and xenophobia ran rampant. Chinese miners were driven from claims or taxed into poverty. Latin Americans were harassed or lynched. African Americans, both free and enslaved, found themselves in a legal gray area, especially as California's path to statehood threatened Southern economic interests. Most tragically, Native American communities faced systematic extermination. Where once stood peaceful villages now spread mining camps, military patrols, and disease. Entire cultures vanished in the space of a few years. Still, the gold rush held enormous significance. It accelerated America's westward expansion, fueled its industrial development, and transformed California into an economic powerhouse. Within just 2 years of the first gold discovery, California's population had swelled to the point that it was admitted as a state in 1850, without ever having been a formal U.S. territory. But it also revealed the contradictions at the heart of the American dream, a nation that celebrated freedom and opportunity while practicing oppression and exclusion. The gold rush was not merely a scramble for wealth. It was a mirror reflecting the deepest desires and the darkest flaws of a growing empire building the tools of the rush: innovation, invention, and industry. The California gold rush was not merely a human migration. It was a crucible of innovation, giving birth to some of the most enduring American traits: resourcefulness, adaptability, and the relentless pursuit of progress. The sudden influx of thousands into the rugged and undeveloped terrain of California presented a logistical and technological challenge that few were prepared for. Basic tools such as pans, shovels, and picks were initially sufficient, as gold lay exposed along riverbeds and in shallow streams. But as surface gold became scarce, prospectors quickly realized they needed better methods, and those methods would change the landscape, both literally and figuratively. Miners turned to increasingly advanced techniques to keep their hopes alive. Rocker boxes, a wooden cradle used to sift gold from sediment, allowed greater efficiency. Then came sluice boxes, which harnessed the power of water to separate heavier gold from dirt and gravel. Still, the deeper the gold lay, the more complex the extraction methods became. Eventually, miners resorted to hydraulic mining, blasting away entire hillsides with high-pressure jets of water to expose gold veins hidden beneath layers of rock. Though it yielded gold in great quantities, it also caused unprecedented environmental destruction, choking rivers with debris and destroying forests and ecosystems on a massive scale. This era of improvisation and invention drew in not only prospectors, but also entrepreneurs and engineers who saw in the chaos an opportunity to shape the infrastructure of the New West. Blacksmiths, carpenters, and mechanics came westward with just as much ambition as the miners themselves. They forged the machines and tools that would drive the gold economy forward. Railways, albeit in their infancy, began to extend toward California. Steamships and cargo routes were established to carry people and goods across oceans and around continents. And perhaps most significantly, new methods of communication, such as mail routes, telegraphs, and later stagecoach lines, began stitching the distant wild territories of the West to the heartbeat of the eastern states. Innovation was also reflected in commerce. Men like Levi Strauss, a German immigrant, took note of the needs of miners and invented products to meet them, like tough denim work pants reinforced with rivets, a design that lives on today. The real fortunes of the gold rush were often made not in gold, but in the industries built around it. Those who catered to the prospectors' endless hunger for food, tools, clothing, housing, and entertainment often walked away richer than those who toiled in the dust. The gold rush revealed a crucial truth about the American character: that prosperity often comes not solely from luck or inheritance, but from ingenuity and hard work. In California's muddy camps and lawless towns, necessity was the mother of invention, and the inventiveness it inspired helped lay the groundwork for the American industrial boom that was to come. But as progress surged forward, so too did inequality, lawlessness, and ecological devastation, reminding all that unchecked ambition carries both rewards and consequences. San Francisco, the birth of a boomtown, if the gold rush was the fire that forged a new chapter in American history, San Francisco was its anvil, shaped again and again by waves of fortune, chaos, and opportunity. San Francisco, the birth of a boomtown, if the gold rush was the fire that forged a new chapter in American history, San Francisco was its anvil, shaped again and again by waves of fortune, chaos, and opportunity. When James Marshall found gold in 1848, San Francisco was little more than a quiet coastal outpost, home to fewer than 1,000 residents. But within months of the gold discovery, it became the central port through which the dreams of an entire world flowed. Ships from Boston, New York, South America, China, and Europe filled the bay until it was cluttered with abandoned vessels, their crews having rushed inland to seek their fortunes in the hills. The transformation was sudden and staggering. By 1850, San Francisco's population had ballooned to over 25,000, a chaotic, multicultural throng of miners, merchants, gamblers, outlaws, and opportunists. Streets once quiet and sandy became choked with traffic and tents. Buildings rose. Overnight, sometimes literally. Men slept in barrels, crates, or even the rotting hulks of beached ships. With limited law enforcement and no formal government in place, San Francisco became both a magnet for innovation and a breeding ground for lawlessness. The city pulsed with both potential and peril. Fortune could be made in a day and lost by nightfall in one of the city's many gambling halls or saloons. Fires broke out regularly, destroying entire blocks in minutes. 7 major fires swept through San Francisco between 1849 and 1851. Yet each time, the city rebuilt faster and grander, embodying a uniquely American refusal to be defeated. Crime, too, flourished. With gold and guns came thieves, gangs, and corrupt officials. In response, citizens formed vigilante committees to protect order, often delivering justice without trial or mercy. These committees would hang suspected criminals in public squares, serving as both punishment and warning. Despite its unruly beginnings, San Francisco became a hub of commerce, culture, and transformation. The port facilitated the flow of supplies and people, while banks and businesses sprang up to support a booming economy. Journalists, artists, poets, and preachers joined the fray, bringing sophistication and structure to a city built on chaos. And while the gold rush was eventually overshadowed by other economic forces, San Francisco remained the beating heart of the West. Its identity, a blend of ambition, resilience, cosmopolitanism, and wild risk-taking, was forged in these early years. The gold rush didn't just build a city, it gave rise to a new kind of American urbanism, one that celebrated hustle, diversity, and the idea that greatness could rise from nothing. San Francisco became the living symbol of the gold rush spirit, a place where the impossible felt possible, and where anyone, with enough luck or grit, could begin again. The harsh reality of the gold fields: hardship, disappointment, and human cost. While the California gold rush began with dazzling dreams of instant riches, the reality on the ground was far harsher, grittier, and often devastating. The gold fields, especially those in the Sierra Nevada foothills, were not the enchanted realms depicted in newspapers or exaggerated letters home. They were brutal, dangerous, and unforgiving places where the majority of gold seekers quickly found their hopes ground down by hunger, exhaustion, sickness, and heartbreak. The first wave of miners, those who arrived in 1848 and early 1849, often did find gold relatively easily, panning in rivers and streams where the precious metal sat exposed. But as the rush gained momentum and tens of thousands of people poured into the region, the surface gold quickly vanished. Latecomers found themselves staking claims in increasingly remote, rugged, and less promising areas. Digging deeper into the earth required not just labor, but also tools, water, and in many cases, a team. Solo miners were soon replaced by small companies, and then by larger, better-funded enterprises. The age of the individual prospector, so central to the romanticized image of the gold rush, was short-lived. Life in the camps was grueling. Days began before sunrise and ended after dark, filled with back-breaking labor in sweltering heat or bone-chilling cold. Miners often lived in tents, lean-tos, or crude log shelters. Sanitation was poor, food was scarce or overpriced, and medical care was practically non-existent. Diseases like dysentery, cholera, and scurvy were rampant, and minor injuries could quickly become deadly infections. Many died alone, their dreams of gold buried with them in the unforgiving soil. The social environment was no kinder. With little law enforcement and a highly competitive atmosphere, violence was common. Disputes over land claims, accusations of theft, and drunken quarrels often ended in bloodshed. Gambling, alcohol, and prostitution were everywhere, and morals. Decay paralleled physical decline. The promise of gold attracted not only honest laborers, but also con artists, criminals, and mercenaries. Yet even amid this suffering, many refused to give up. Some clung to hope with religious fervor, convinced that the next pan, the next crevice, the next claim would finally deliver them from poverty. Others reinvented themselves, turning from mining to trade, farming, or small business. But for every success story, there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of men and women who left California poorer than they arrived, physically and emotionally broken, their dreams turned to dust. The gold rush, in this light, was not simply a tale of glittering fortunes. It was also a cautionary epic, a reminder that the pursuit of wealth can exact a staggering human cost. The hills of California were littered not just with abandoned picks and empty tents, but with the hopes of a generation who learned too late that gold could be as cruel as it was beautiful. Diversity and discrimination, a new cultural landscape, and deep divides. The California gold rush was one of the most diverse migrations in American history. Within a few years, California became home to people from every corner of the world: Mexicans, Chileans, Chinese, Australians, French, Germans, Irish, and African Americans, both enslaved and free. The sheer multiculturalism of the gold rush was unprecedented. It was a meeting of worlds, a spontaneous collision of cultures, languages, beliefs, and customs, all drawn together by the singular pursuit of wealth. In many ways, this diversity represented the best of what the American dream could be. A place where anyone, regardless of background, could stake a claim and succeed through effort and luck. The mining camps were filled with vibrant scenes of shared labor, multicultural markets, and blended traditions. Chinese restaurants served noodles to Irish miners. Mexican vaqueros shared techniques of water management. African American cooks, freed from slavery in some cases, established some of the first black-owned businesses in the West. But this promise of inclusion soon soured as deep-seated racism and nationalism reared their heads. The same people who had flocked to California, full of dreams, found themselves ostracized, abused, and excluded by laws and violence designed to protect white miners and businessmen. Chinese immigrants were especially targeted. Initially welcomed for their industriousness and low wages, they were soon demonized as threats. The state imposed the foreign miners' tax, a heavy levy designed to drive non-white, non-American miners off their claims. Chinese workers were beaten, murdered, or forced into slave-like labor. Entire communities were burned to the ground with impunity. Mexican and Latin American miners, many of whom had mined in California long before it became U.S. territory, found themselves cast as outsiders in their own land. They were pushed from their claims, sometimes at gunpoint, or lynched by vigilantes for the flimsiest of reasons. African Americans, despite California being a free state, lived in fear of kidnapping and re-enslavement. Native Americans, already devastated by disease and displacement, were subjected to outright genocide. Some were hunted for bounties, with state-sanctioned militias paid to slaughter entire villages in the name of civilization. Yet amid these horrors, acts of resistance and resilience flourished. Chinese immigrants built entire towns and societies in the face of persecution. African Americans published newspapers and founded churches. Native tribes that survived adapted, reorganized, and endured despite overwhelming odds. And in rare but important instances, communities came together across cultural lines to protect one another and fight for justice. The diversity of the gold rush was a spark of possibility, proof that America could be a place of mingled cultures and shared opportunity. But it also exposed the fragile line between hope and hatred, between inclusion and exclusion. California, in this explosive period, became a microcosm of the nation's greatest potential and its gravest sins. The gold rush not only enriched the land, it revealed the deep divisions that would haunt the American experiment for generations to come. The legacy of the gold rush, from frontier to foundation. The California gold rush, though brief in its most frenzied phase, left a legacy that permanently altered the course of American history. What began as a local discovery at Sutter's Mill in 1848 became a force of transformation that reverberated across continents and generations. By the early 1850s, the easily accessible gold was mostly gone, and the Great Rush began to slow. But the world it had created, a world of new cities, technologies, industries, and social orders, would remain and evolve long after the last pan was emptied. Perhaps the most lasting consequence of the gold rush was the rapid acceleration of American expansion and statehood. In just 2 years, California went from a distant, scarcely populated Mexican territory to a fully fledged U.S. state, joining the Union in 1850. This was no small feat. It bypassed the usual process of territorial status due to its explosive population growth and economic importance. California's admission helped to redraw the political map of the United States and intensified the debates over slavery, tipping the fragile balance between free and slave states, a conflict that would eventually erupt into the Civil War. Economically, the gold rush was nothing short of a miracle. Billions of dollars, in today's value, in gold flowed into the American economy, funding railroads, banks, and factories, and bolstering U.S. currency reserves. The influx of wealth also stimulated global trade. San Francisco became a crucial international port, while merchants, bankers, and industrialists used California gold to launch new empires of commerce. The technological innovations born in the mines and fields, mechanized mining tools, water engineering systems, and transportation networks became the backbone of the Industrial Revolution in the West. But the legacy was not solely financial. The gold rush reshaped the American identity. It solidified the myth of the self-made man, the rugged individualist who braved danger, defied odds, and forged a new life from raw wilderness. This mythology inspired millions and became deeply embedded in American culture, art, and politics. Yet, it also bred a darker ethos, one of exploitation, environmental destruction, and racial supremacy. The same spirit that carved cities from wild hillsides also displaced native peoples, ravaged ecosystems, and reinforced systems of inequality. Socially, the gold rush laid the foundation for modern California, a place of ambition, diversity, innovation, and reinvention. It brought together people of every race, language, and creed and challenged them to coexist in the face of hardship. Some failed, some thrived, but all helped to build a society unlike any the world had seen. That early melting pot of miners, merchants, and migrants would evolve into Silicon Valley engineers, Hollywood artists, and the modern dreamers who continue to define California today. In this way, the gold rush never truly ended. Its spirit lives on in every story of reinvention, in every risk taken in pursuit of a better future. It remains a testament to both the heights and depths of human ambition and to the powerful truth that history is not just made by nations, but by individuals who dared to believe they could change their destiny. The Gold Rush and the American Dream. A myth forged in fire and earth as the dust settled and the rivers ran quieter. The true legacy of the gold rush revealed itself in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed it. The gold rush became more than an event. It became a symbol, a founding story of the American West and of the American dream itself. It was a moment when people from across the globe believed, if only for a fleeting time, that anyone could become someone. That with courage, determination, and a little luck, fortunes could be made and lives transformed. The gold rush gave birth to a mythology of rags to riches success, etched in diaries, newspapers, and folk songs. These stories traveled far beyond the hills of California, fueling migration, colonization, and the belief that the New World was a land of unlimited promise. Even those who failed often spoke of the experience with reverence. They had lived through something epic, something larger than themselves. In those wild hills, they had seen the raw power of nature, the limits of human endurance, and the full spectrum of hope and despair. Yet the myth came at a steep cost. For every winner, there were countless losers. For every ounce of gold, there were broken families, desecrated lands, and shattered indigenous civilizations. The very dream that inspired so many also justified atrocities: the exploitation of labor, the erasure of native tribes, the manipulation of laws to benefit the powerful. The gold rush, for all its glory, also exposed the fragile line between dream and delusion, between aspiration and greed. Still, the allure of the gold rush endured, evolving into new forms. It could be seen in the oil booms of Texas, the skyscrapers of New York, and the tech startups of Silicon Valley. The promise of reinvention, of staking your claim and rewriting your story, became a permanent fixture of the American psyche. That is the true inheritance of the gold rush, not the gold itself, but the hunger to seek it. In the end, the gold rush was a paradox, both a triumph and a tragedy, a celebration of human potential and a cautionary tale about its excesses. It built cities and destroyed cultures. It launched industries and ruined lives. And through it all, it left behind a legend, a golden thread woven into the fabric of America's identity. The rivers may no longer shimmer with flakes of gold, but their legacy remains in the heartbeat of every dreamer who dares to chase the impossible. For better or worse, the gold rush became the soul of a nation on the rise, a soul forged in the dust and fire of a land called California.